we'll still hear a few people buzzing in as we commence, but most importantly, nothing we can do about that. So welcome all, folks, for what is the 7th in our series of MMC Ireland Lunch and Learn. These 1 hour sessions are generally around a half an hour of a presentation from one of the MMC Ireland members, followed by a Q&A session. So we put aside an hour, and it won't go beyond the hour, guys. Sometimes it can be 45 minutes. The intention for this is for MMC Ireland to discuss what they're up to in the market, to discuss what innovations are out there, to educate the marketplace on regulatory changes, and making sure that people who are involved in the industry are as up to date in the various sectors that all our various members and companies are involved in. So today we have the pleasure of having Heron Brothers and Heron Fire Doors in particular. Heron are in business 70 years, and they are 7 years manufacturing fire doors. So today's topic is particularly around fire safety and specifically fire doors. And as Mark McAvoy simply put it, what makes a fire door, and how important fire doors are, etc. So I'm going to hand over to Mark McAvoy first. Mark will do a brief introduction on Heron Fire Doors, and then both Donal and Julian will take the technical presentation. And can I ask all of you on the call, as you have questions throughout the presentation, if you pop them into the chat, both Donal, Julian and Mark will collate them towards the end, chaired by Anna, and we'll answer them as appropriate at the end. And then the guys may well open the floor to some verbal questions also, which may well be appropriate. So as you have questions throughout the presentation, guys, put them into the chat. We'll collate them and deal with them at the end in one go. So without further ado, as they say, I'm going to hand over to Mark McAvoy. I'm looking forward to this. Mark, over to you.
Yeah, Paul, firstly, thanks very much to Paul and Anna for the opportunity to present today. I'm Mark McAvoy, the Sales Director for Heron Manufacture Ltd. And with our Heron Fire Doors, we've recently joined the MMC Ireland. I'd just like to introduce Julian Knipe, General Manager of Heron Fire Doors, and also Donal Fullerton, Technical Manager. And there's a lot of letters after Donal's name, so that'll add to the subject as well, is because it is fairly technical and you need the backup. And that's one thing, we've got a great team here of people, and it certainly gives me great confidence going to the market around such a complex subject to support. And we see the growth of MMC in Ireland and across the board, and fire doors is becoming ever increasing, and that's where we hope we can help and reach out. So without further ado, the topics we'll cover today, folks, as Paul alluded to, what makes a fire door a fire door? Also the shift from door assemblies to door sets, fire testing and certification and the key essentials, fire door regulations, some of the new upcoming regulatory changes, and also we'll touch on the new CITB installer competency frameworks. There's a lot to be covered off. We will maybe run over some of it just given the time constraints, because you could spend a lot of time in some subjects, but as through the chat facility, the questions at the end, and our details will always be there. You can reach out at any time. So as we said, Heron Fire Doors is part of the group Heron Manufacture. We have 6 elements to the business. We have also joinery. We do a lot of timber into London, doors and sliding sash windows. Heron Fire Doors, which we'll cover today, all your mouldings through ProMold, HML Contracts, a fitting division. Shadbolt Doors, which is a 150-year-old door company in Braintree that we acquired a few years ago. I think they did one of the first ever fire tests in the UK. And also JNO, our passive fire solutions, where we certify and give that golden thread sign off as well. So that just gives a bit of an overview on the group. HFD was established in 2018, and we moved into our new premises here in Cookstown in 2021. With a strategic focus, really respond to high and increased nationwide demand for certified fire doors. And a lot of this, as we all are aware, is driven by post-Grenfell and continues to be a topic. We've invested 6.5 million in advanced equipment and a new factory ensuring premium quality. As I said, we've got a skilled team and professionals in joinery, technical and manufacturing, and a huge investment in automation and machinery to make sure that we're putting out not only technical products but also at the quality. We can do certified installations via our in-house teams and third-party certified as well for compliant installations, and also industry certifications through BM Trada, Q Mark for fire doors, PAS 24 and security enhancements. And from a testing point of view, we've got extensive primary testing and also to the upcoming regulations in 2029 compliant. We have a lot of good innovations and stuff, but we're going to strictly keep today's presentation to updating you on the technical side and hopefully adding value in that way. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Julian Knipe, our GM. He'll do the first part of the presentation. Donal will take over from there. And if you could kindly put any questions in the chat, or we'll have a Q&A at the end where we'll gladly field your questions. And if not, if we can't field it there and then, we'll certainly come back to you. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Mark. We will keep the topic hopefully as self-explanatory as possible and not set too high a bar, although as fire door manufacturers, we do provide a pretty low threshold. So what is a fire door? Fire doors provide passage of persons, air or objects which together with its frames and furniture as installed in a building is intended when closed to resist the passage of fire and or gaseous products of combustion and is capable of meeting specified performance criteria to those ends. If you want to look at the video on the right there, that's showing the external corridor of an apartment block where a fire has ripped through that corridor. There's a 30-minute fire door there in place. As you can see, the fire's been put out, and you look into the bed studio area there, you can see the difference between the corridor side and the studio side. Okay, so fire door assemblies and fire door sets. In the modular world, you're used to factory first thinking, and that's what we like ourselves. Fire door sets love that mindset because they're not huge fans of on-site improvisation. So a fire door assembly. A fire door assembly means whenever a door set arrives or a door arrives on site, you could have a frame provided by one supplier, the door core provided by another, the ironmongery provided in a bag from another source, and then all of those components are put on site by someone on site, and hopefully they have the very high responsibility area of ensuring that all is compliant. Fire door sets, on the other hand, are fully finished fire doors, leaf within the frame, on hinges, ironmongery installed, ready, pre-assembled for installation. So the responsibility lies with the manufacturer and is in their factory to ensure everything before they sent out is fully compliant in that controlled environment. Assemblies rely heavily on everybody doing their bit correctly. So as we all know, relying on everyone always doing everything perfectly is a pretty bold strategy. An assembly isn't wrong in our opinion, but it just creates more opportunities for compliance chain to break down. Okay, and so why are fire doors required? Fire doors are a passive fire obstacle, so they stop the passage of fire moving from one area of a building to another. And you see there's an escape route plan on screen, and as you pass through that escape route, there will be fire doors along the way to compartmentalize and stop the spread of fire from one area of the building to another. Besides being a fire door, they also have the responsibility sometimes of privacy, hitting certain acoustic ratings, thermal ratings, and security. You want to move on, Donal? Okay, fire testing. So there are two main types of fire door test that you can conduct in the UK and Ireland. The first to come along was a British standard, BS 476, and then followed on a little later was a European standard, 1634. Both are perfectly acceptable in the market at present, although the UK come 2029 is going to move away from the British standard. So is there really one better than another, or is there any differences in the two? There are some differences. So just to highlight, under the British standard, the fire test undertakes an integrity-only test, whereas the European EN 1634 takes into account for both integrity and insulation. So just to explain the difference in those two, integrity is the stopping of the passage of fire from one side to the other. Insulation, really in layman's terms, covers the passage of heat from one side to the other. So the likes of glass on the non-fire side, if there was no insulation requirements in that glass, you put your hand on it and cause yourself severe injuries because that glass will have heated up. Insulation stops that. It also, a highly insulated door will stop eventually, potentially the door heating up so much on the non-fire side that it could potentially combust or cause something around it to combust, and the fire passes through that way rather than physically passing through the fire door set itself. We do get questions quite often on which one is the more onerous. That can be a subject of debate for certainly myself and most people in the fire door industry. We would say the European standard is more onerous. That comes around to the fact that the thermocouples, which are both inside the furnace and outside, you'll see the outside ones there just on the face of the glass in the bottom left hand corner. They're placed on the glass to measure how quickly the heat and the constant temperature is in the fire test at any one time. Within those, in the European test, you'll see that they're insulated rather than exposed, and that just means that it takes longer on the European test for those to heat up to a temperature, or faster, sorry, to come up to temperature. So that means that the gradient at the beginning of the test is that much steeper in heating up, and that means at the beginning of the test, the European test gets up to temperature that wee bit faster. Wasn't always a requirement, but very much is now. Along with fire, we have smoke. Smoke is the biggest killer in a fire setting. It's not the fire itself, but the inhalation of smoke. The British standard, you will see very often a little s after the fire rating. So you'll see FD30S or F30S. Within the European, you will see say for example, an EA30 or an EI30, and then an SA following that. So that S or that SA indicates that there's a smoke requirement. The British standard tests for smoke on 3 sides, but you'll note from looking at the slides there that the European actually can test on 3 or 4. So besides that SA, you sometimes will see a 3 or 4 after it. And the 3 simply means it's been tested on 3 sides. The 4 simply means it's been tested on 4 sides. From a compliance and responsible point of view, you should probably always be looking for that SA4, and that means that it's not being just tested on the head or either of the 2 jambs, but at the threshold as well. Smoke leakage is measured around the full perimeter, and any varying pressures are also noted. And that's measured in pascals. So you're always looking for a test that achieves below 3 per meter cubed, pascals at 25. And besides doors requiring fire and smoke, there's a few other things doors need to achieve, and that's also namely PAS 24 security testing. There's no legal requirement to have PAS 24 requirement in Ireland, but there is a requirement for that in the UK. So the PAS 24 is basically an attack test with test houses using a limited number of tools over a 3-minute period to attack a door set in the situation where there could be burglary or someone trying to break through that door. The 3 minutes doesn't start the clock right now and carry on for a period of 3 minutes. The attacker is allowed to take maybe 30 to 40 seconds using one method, and then stop the clock, allowed to go away, to have a little think to themselves, and then come back to attack it for another period, until they use the 3 minutes up in its entirety. So it is a pretty onerous test. The PAS 24 is commonly used in the residential market as opposed to the commercial side of things, but it would be a recommended requirement for any door that is on the external of a building, certainly, or in a set of flats or residential area to the front entrance doors. Okay, so independent third-party certification. There's a number of companies out there that do offer a UCAS accredited third-party certification. These are companies that come in and independently audit fire door manufacturers, fire installers, or persons doing maintenance. So in the fire door world, you'd really be comparing these guys to an ISO equivalent. For ourselves at Heron Fire Doors, our factory is audited every 12 months. And that's when a BM Trada Q-Mark, one of those said companies, there's others out there such as Blue Sky or IFC, they come in to our factory and they audit us on our fire door manufacture. There's no legal requirement to have third-party certification, but we see that as one of the key ways in the marketplace to demonstrate competency. A company as ourselves, we're 7 years manufacturing. We've a lot of experience in the building through working at other companies, but from a competence point of view and demonstrating that competence, that certification that we get through one of these schemes such as BM Trada verifies that our doors can be trusted. It's not a case of us advising, oh, we've made fire doors for 50 years. We know what we're doing. We've got experience. Experience is great, but you've got to be able to back it up with a piece of paper. And I would highlight really, particularly in the building market now with tragedies such as Grenfell, to ensure that you are buying a third-party accredited and approved product. So the Q-Mark scheme and other schemes do different things in order to identify the door set itself. So if you have used the Q-Mark scheme and procured through the Q-Mark scheme, you'll expect to see various plugs on the door set that you receive. Plugs mean various things. They can tell you whether it's an FD30 or an FD60 door. It can also tell you whether the glass has been cut out or the cutout for the glass has been done in the factory and installed in the factory. And it can also tell you the level to which back to door assemblies and door sets, whether that has been done in the factory or done on site. So if you're asking for a complete door set, fully finished in the factory, you'd be looking for either that Q-Mark silver plug over on the right or the white plug, which also covers off fire and smoke. Okay, so how does certification work? We get questions like this quite a bit. And people ask us, you know, what's the difference between a global assessment? What's the difference between a field of application? What's an XAP? What's a test? So just to run through that, at the very beginning, you'd carry out a fire test or a smoke test or a PAS 24 test for security. Those then, after doing those several times on different configurations, whether in a fire test, you maybe test a single door with glass, then you test a double door with locks in it, or you test an array of different scenarios. Those then go into what's called a field of application, and basically the easiest way to explain what a field of application is, it's really the recipe book. It takes maybe, in some instances, it can be as low as 2 to 3 tests, up to hundreds of tests, and it amalgamates them all together, and it advises that, yeah, we've covered that off in 3 or 4 of those tests, and we've covered that off in 2 tests, so that allows you then, under field of application, to pull together the ingredients in that original fire test on to another fire test and put it together to form that door set. And then we have what we call dual scope and triple scope. A dual scope is whenever the fire tests and the smoke tests are all amalgamated together, And then in triple scope is whenever the fire tests, smoke tests, and past 24 tests have all been amalgamated together. So if you see that dual scope or triple scope or tri-scope, that's basically what that means. So in today's modern market, and whenever you're procuring or ensuring that you're supplying a compliant product, you always want to be looking out for that dual scope, because that tells you that the door has not only just been fire tested, but it's also been smoke tested as well. Okay, so we did touch on the two different types of fire door tests. The British Standard 476, which is the national standard in the UK, and EN 1634, which is the European standard. So in 2029, the UK has decided that they will solely rely on European testing. So there will be no longer any more BS 476. Ireland at the moment hasn't made a decision on whether to do that or not. So at the moment, the UK has got rid of the British standard, but Ireland has decided that they will maintain it for now. Again, it's okay to use the BS 476 standard up until 2029, and any door supplied into the UK market up until 2029, which is the BS 476, will be fine for the life cycle of the product, but you will be unable to install and provide BS 476 accredited doors from 2029 onwards. Again, a valid opinion in the marketplace at the moment is that there's quite a lot of EN 1634 testing out there. So if you're going to be supplying a product now that's going to be around for the next 25, 30 years, depending on how long a door set will survive within situ, if the testing is already available to the new standard and the standard that will be used in the UK going forward, we'd recommend that for that UK market. There are two different types of what I call a recipe book. There's the field of application and there's the XAP. So field of application is a British national standard. It allows you to use both the British and the European tests together amalgamated into that recipe book, whereas the XAP only allows European testing. So that's just a big one, debugging the myth. What's the difference between a field of application or an XAP? Essentially the same thing, only a field of application allows both British and European testing. The XAP only allows European. Okay, so just touching on CE marking around fire rated door sets, and any door set. In fact, there's no legal requirement for an internal door set to be CE marked. There is a requirement, however, for all external door sets to be CE marked. The ideal CE marked door is secure, it's fire rated, it's acoustically sound, it's accessible, it's thermally efficient and easy to use, which is simple to put together as a manufacturer, apart from all of those things. You'll see on a UK mark there on the right hand side, it lists all of those within the label. Any door that you receive that is CE UKCA marked will have that label with it. If it doesn't have that label with it, or it doesn't have those declarations with it, ask for those, because it is important. A door is one of the hardest jobs on a building. Everyone expects it to stop fire, smoke, noise, burglars, keep heat in, and still has to do everything else and of course open nicely. And now I'm going to pass you over to Donal. If anybody was hoping for a light chat on regulations, this is where I'm bound to tell you you've made a serious tactical error. Thanks.
Thanks. So we're just going to do a bit of a recap here. This sort of outlines what the building regulations are across the UK and Ireland. There are various parts to it, and the technical guidance documents that come with each of them do differ slightly, but fundamentally the regulations are are broadly the same across the board. So we're just going to go down through each of these here individually and pull out what the key takes are from each of them in relation to fire doors. So of course, part B of the building regulations is the overarching set of standards. Fire regulations will always take precedent over every other regulation there is there. So part B of the building regs, it is broken out into 2 volumes, one for dwellings and the other for buildings other than dwellings. So the likes of your hospitals, schools, factories, shops, etc. You may get buildings where you may have commercial residential buildings that will fall into volume 1 rather than volume 2. That does differ slightly from England and Wales. England and Wales volume 1 tends to be for houses and volume 2 is for buildings other than houses. So where are FD30 and E30 SA doors required? So for E30 and E60 and FD30 and FD60, all external fire door sets are required to be CE marked to 16034, which means they have to be tested to the EN fire test, EN 1634 part 1. So what happens is you do the fire test, you do the smoke test as required, and then you can either put that into an XAP document, as Julian was saying there, and then you classify it under the EN 13501 Part 2 reaction to fire framework, or you go straight ahead and you can classify a fire test report. Internal door sets, they can be tested to EN or BS fire tests, and they can be classified as E30 or FD30. So in short there, external fire door sets have to be CE marked and they have to be E30 SA as a minimum, and internal doors across Ireland can be E30 or FD30. Flat entrance doors up to 30 metre in buildings up to 30 metres where opening onto common corridors or lobbies can be either FD30S or E30SA because they are generally inside a building. Protected stairways in houses of 3 stories or more, like loft conversions. You might get sort of 3-story townhouses that have that 3rd floor. There is a minimum of a 30-minute fire rated door to go in there. It can be 2 BS or EN tests. It's generally only from the 3rd floor up. So any doors in a standard dwelling are generally not fire rated anyway. If you have doors from integral garages that lead from the house into a garage built onto the side, generally they are classed as external doors, so they'll be classified under the EN regime as an E30 door because you're technically going from a heated space to an unheated space. So there's certain U-value requirements there as part of that. Protected corridors and lobbies serving as escape routes in buildings up to 30 minutes are also required to be fire rated. So a minimum of 30 minutes to either FD30 or E30. And service cupboards, doors, the likes of your riser doors, electrical cupboards, doors in escape routes, etc. They can be FD30 or FD30S if there's a smoke requirement, or FD60S even where risk might be higher. So in all cases, whether it's an FD30 or an FD60 door, the building fire strategy will always determine what the fire rating needs to be. Likewise, for 60-minute doors, internal and external door sets follow the same pattern. So external 60-minute door sets, where they are specified, are required to be CE marked EN 16034 and fire tested under EN 1634 Part 1. Internal door sets can be tested to BS 476 or EN 1634. Flat entrance doors in buildings over 30 metres opening onto common corridors or lobbies are generally 60-minute rated doors. So there isn't a great deal of buildings in all of Ireland that are beyond that. You may get buildings between 30 and 50 metres, like high-rise apartment blocks in and around the likes of Dublin and Cork, but really outside of that, not a great deal. And buildings over 50 metres, you could probably count them on 2 hands. High-risk service cupboards are also in residential common areas are required to be 60-minute rated, and they can be to FD60 or E60. Moving on to thermal efficiency. So Part L of the Irish building regulations cover off what the thermal efficiency is of any particular building. The overarching message of Part B is to set out the requirements for energy efficiency and to reduce carbon emissions across the board. It generally covers insulation and fabric efficiency, as well as airtightness, lighting efficiency, renewable energy and carbon targets. But then it also outlines different ways of calculating energy efficiency across a building. So certainly, when you look at the building as a whole, it's generally done through calculation methods rather than physical testing. But in relation to doors, there is a particular test standard. So calculations and simulations can be run on the doorset to EN ISO 10077 Part 2 for doors. For windows, it's EN ISO 1007 Part 1. Now, there are physical tests involved. It's generally not required, but you can send door sets away if you want to do the likes of heat flow method testing or hot box testing, where you essentially install the door into a test rig and you measure the heat transfer from one side of the door to the other at varying temperatures. And that'll give you a much more accurate read than what a calculation or a simulation might do. So Part L applies to the building fabric and is concerned with the heat transfer to and from the external envelope. It only applies to external doors because generally they are on the outside of the building. In Table 1 of Technical Guidance Document L, you will get the U-value requirements for the door. They are calculated based on an overall weighted area of all doors, windows and roof lights in the dwelling or premises. And that's generally 1.6 watt per meter squared Kelvin. When constructing new builds, retrofitting existing homes and adding on new extensions. In all cases, no element should be below 2.2 watt per meter squared Kelvin. For internal doors, there is no U-value requirement because generally it is understood that both sides of the door will be a similar temperature, so the transfer of heat from one side to the other is a lot less than if there was a 20-degree difference from the inside of a property and the outside of a property. Just moving on to what the actual definitions are of internal and external doors. So an internal door is within the insulated heating envelope of the building. It separates one heated room from another and is not part of the external fabric, so therefore there is no U-value requirement for that. External door sets, external fire door sets are required to be CE marked, and as part of that there is a requirement it's a self-declaration, but it is a requirement nonetheless to provide a U-value for the door set itself. It separates a heated space from an unheated space in a building, and that could be spaces such as garages, lofts, conservatories and porches. It forms part of the building envelope. As I believe EN 12519 Part 1 gives you the legal definition of what an external door is. That is a designated standard within the UK as well. So the definition of what an external door in the UK and Ireland is the same. Moving on to Part M, accessibility hasn't typically been a strong talking point in recent years, but we've certainly seen an uplift in the amount of queries in relation to accessibility. So there's definitely a drive, not just in Ireland, but across the UK to make buildings more accessible. The regulations that drive the guidance documents are slightly different depending on the region that you're looking in. So the Republic of Ireland does operate under the EU framework, so statutory instrument 636 will give the accessibility requirements for Ireland. England, Scotland, Wales operates under the new Equality Act 2010, and Northern Ireland, for whatever reason, has chosen not to adopt that, and they are still operating under the old DDA Act of 1995. But fundamentally, the guidance documents are thereabouts the same. There are some subtle differences which we'll get into as we go through this. So the technical guidance document M is the document that sets out the requirements for Part M of the building regulations. It covers the legal requirement for making buildings accessible and easy to use for people with all disabilities. So whether it be visual impairments or physical disabilities, missing fingers, people in wheelchairs, etc. But the principle of Part M of the building regs, irrespective of where you are in the UK or Ireland, are the same. It's so that no one is discriminated against. So the first real sticking point is around zones of visibility. BS 8300, which is the DDA, that outlines positions where vision panels must be on doors. So if you've got a single vision panel, it must be between 500 and 1500 mil from the floor level. That's so that people in wheelchairs are able to see through the glass to the other side to avoid injury. If you need to split a vision panel, then there are specific requirements there as well for the top and the bottom vision panel. So the sizes there are the viewing sizes, specifically the viewing sizes, not the vision panel sizes. So for example, you might need to cut your aperture for your door at about 470 or 480 from floor level because you'll lose part of your viewing size when you put your beading on. So that's certainly one to consider. Opaque interruptions should not obstruct more than 350 mil from the vertical zone. Next up, we've got handle requirements. So generally, the handle must be positioned between 800 and 1050. 900 mil across the board, UK and Ireland, is 900 mil from finished floor level. There are certain requirements there as well around the handle itself, and there's some key dimensions there to take note of. So the handle length must be a minimum of 95 mil so that someone can grab it. It also must be a minimum of 19 mil thick. That's general standard thickness of a round bar handle. The handle on the far right hand side there just shows the key dimensions. There also must need to be enough room behind the handle between the door and the inside of the handle so that people can get their hands in. Pardon me. And there must also be a return on the door. So as the lever sort of comes around, it returns in towards the door edge so that people with disabilities and they're missing fingers, etc., are able to grab that with one hand or one finger and operate the door. Exactly the same with the likes of WC disabled or accessible turn-in indicators, things like that. The person must be able to open the door with a finger, essentially. Moving on to LRVs, this is probably less known. We're certainly trying to raise awareness of it. We do see it come up from time to time. So LRVs is essentially measures the contrast in color between two components on a door. So whether that be the door on the wall, or the door and the vision panel, or the beading on the vision panel, even the door edge, there's LRV requirements from the door edge to the door face. And it must be a minimum of 20% difference in color. Now there's a number of different ways of measuring light reflectance values. I don't have the standards handy here, but the whole point of it is so that people with visual impairments are able to identify, yes, that is the door edge, that is the door face, there is a vision panel there. There's also LRV differences between the wall and the door so that they can see where the door opening is. And there are additional requirements for the likes of glass manifestations. So it's essentially to ensure that people don't be walking into glass. They're essentially translucent or opaque patterns that are self-adhesive onto the glass so that someone can distinguish that it's not just a clear glass panel. There's something there breaking it up. Closing forces, this is another key one as well. So there are maximum opening forces for door closers. Generally, your standard scissor arm, rack and pinion closers do not achieve the closing forces required for Part M. So you must always look for a cam action closer. So just there on the right hand side is just an image of what a concealed cam action closer is. Cam action overhead closers work the exact same way. The cam takes the force out of the closer to make the door easier to open. You can test this using torque meters, etc., but the maximum opening force should be no more than 30 newtons from when you start at 0 degrees to about 30 degrees. And then from about 30 degrees to 60 degrees, it can't go above 22 newtons. And that's purely because you need slightly more force in order to open the door in that for initial swing, and then less for the rest of the motion. So there may be options where people with extreme disabilities wouldn't even be able to operate a door closer, never mind a cam action door closer. So there is a requirement that there may be a requirement there for the likes of electronic operators or free swing or hold open closers, but they serve the same function, and they can all be wired in to be compatible with, say, you know, if it's a flat entrance door, you might have an electronic locking system on the door. You can tie that in with the push button access or the key fob access to open the door. Clear openings is another key one. This is probably predominantly what people focus on. Section 3.3, Table 5 does outline what the clear openings are in Technical Guidance Document M. Accessible rooms generally is about 775 mil if looking at it head on, and around 800 mil if you're required to turn. So diagram 35 does sort of show you how to calculate effective clear opening widths. There's a key difference here between the UK and Ireland, where the effective clear opening width is calculated slightly differently. So if you look at the diagram on the far left hand side, you can see that the effective clear opening width accounts for the projection of the handle. So assuming that that door can't open more than 90 degrees, then you must take into consideration the projection of the lever handle, because ultimately that's going to impede your clear opening. In the UK, they do not take into consideration the handle projection, so it's essentially calculated without that. Obviously in Ireland, it doesn't matter if you can open that door beyond say 90 degrees. I think it's around 105 degrees. If you can open the door to that much, then the handle projection doesn't come into it, just as illustrated there in the center diagram. So I'll just breeze over some additional requirements here. Door viewers on flat entrance doors or hotel bedroom door sets should be positioned at two different heights. So really you should have one at around 1050 from the floor and also 1500 mil from the floor. So that's people with wheelchair access are not discriminated against. Likewise on door thresholds, whether it be a hardwood threshold or an aluminium sill, it should not project more than 15 mil above the finished floor level. So generally, fire door certification does not typically allow for less than 15 mil, and that purely comes down to what's been fire tested. Generally, people use 15 mil as a general rule of thumb, but there's nothing to say you can reduce that down, provided it's a tested solution. Door numerals as well should also be embossed to help visually impaired users identify the location. Technical Guidance Document E sort of touches on sound and the acoustics of a building. It sets out the minimum standards for sound insulation in a building to prevent noise transmission. And that's between flats and houses, between rooms in residential properties, whether it be student accommodations or care homes or even hospitals. It ensures occupants have reasonable acoustic privacy in that regard. So in terms of doors, there is no explicit decibel rating outlined in Part E of the building regs. Most apartment entrance doors should achieve between 30 to 32 dB, but there's nothing in there that mandates a specific dB rating on any particular door. It can be tested, you know, it is a requirement, certainly for CE marking. But internally, there's no requirement to have it. But often manufacturers will do acoustic tests anyway to determine, you know, what sort of range their door sets are in. So the test method for the door sets is EN ISO 10140 Part 2. And they essentially install the door into the test rig and measure the sound transmission through the door at varying locations. This does differ from England and Wales. So if you look at Approved Doc E, they have specific requirements for certain door types. So flat entrance doors supplied into the UK have to meet a minimum decibel rating of 29 dB, 30 dB for classrooms and lecture areas, and a minimum of 35 dB for music rooms. Now, so they are the mandated minimum requirements in England and Wales. However, you may get architects specifying well beyond that into the mid 40s. You know, if you've got you know, studios and halls and things like that. And there's also a minimum door mass outlined of 25 kilo per meter squared. Moving on to security. So in Ireland, there isn't a specific security standard like there is Part Q of the UK building regulations. The security is kind of just, it's more addressed broadly throughout all of the standards and the technical guidance documents. But technical guidance document D does outline that all materials and products used in construction must be suitable for their intended purpose and conditions of use. So there are a lot of implications here about what that actually means. I mean, doors and locking systems should be fit for purpose. Products should be manufactured to recognise standards, and installations should follow the manufacturer's instructions or recognise standards. So this supports the expectation that door sets and locks are robust and appropriate for use. So although there's no specific security regulation that mandates either PAS 24 testing or LPS 1175 or STS 202, whatever it might be, architects might well go ahead and specify as a best practice what they want that minimum security level to be. So that's really it in a nutshell for what the current regulations look like. I'm just going to touch real quick on some changes that are certainly coming to the UK that will affect Ireland. I know BS 8214, the Code of Practice, is widely used across Ireland and the UK. It's been around for some time. It only covers door assemblies, so that's being revised now. We expect that there to launch now on the 21st of April. And it's going to be broadened to cover a whole wide range of topics, including more detailed fire stoppings, and broaden door assemblies out to door sets as well. So it lays out what the best practice guide would be for door sets as well as door assemblies. Another big one as well, the UK has just been mandated to reform the regulatory framework for products. So I mean, in short, the framework itself. So this is one of the outputs of the Grenfell Inquiry. So I think the number one key topic on the outputs from Grenfell was that there were a lot of feelings between the housing community and local government and BSR and the like. So what they've decided to do now is form all that under a single construction product regulator. So the likes of BSR submissions, including high-rise blocks, which aren't covered under the UK Building Safety Act, will all sort of be brought under one roof. All product standard reform, certification, the single product regulator will also form the basis to store all primary test evidence for everybody, so that it's easily accessible and more transparent. So the first consultation for that has taken place. It just took place there last week. It's probably going to take 2 to 3 years to establish the timeline for that, but big changes coming in the UK. Not quite sure how that will affect Ireland as of yet. One that will affect Ireland, EN 14351 Part 1, which is the standard that outlines performance characteristics for external door sets. That's part of the CE marking framework. That is being redrafted as we speak. We expect that to be done by 2029, and that's going to be expanded for internal doors as well. So 14351 will capture all characteristics for all internal and external door sets. So the EU Technical Committee 33, that they look after windows, doors and shutters. The UK is part of that, and they are reforming the EN standard, or at least participating in it. And what we expect to come out of that is a set of characteristics for internal door sets that's going to be harmonised across Europe, and then will enable CE marking of internal door sets. So we know internal CE marking of internal door sets has been talked about for a very, very long time. This is the first real sign of movement on it, and we suspect in the coming years now, by 2029, 2030, we'll be looking to CE mark internal doors as well as external doors. So there's also a new code of practice and development, BS 8623. This is to replace the PFPF guide to undertaking technical assessments. I believe this will form any doors that are drafted under a national standard field of application. So they use the PFPF guide to draft normal field of applications under the BS 476 framework. It won't affect EN frameworks like the EN 1634 testing regime or the EN 15269 XAP rules. So the new standard will play a key role in ensuring that technical assessments remain part of the accepted industry practice, and not solely driven by primary testing. So it sort of creates a route for technical assessment, not just pushing the regulator pushing everybody for primary test evidence, which seems to be we get increasing requests for this. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is the upcoming frameworks. And just to finish off here, then, it's worth noting that the CITB have released a competency framework. So over the last number of years, the British Woodworking Federation have been working with a number of different companies, contractors, to sort of map out a timeline of what a framework would be for a fire door installer. So it does set out a clear route for competency for fire doors being installed. People do not know enough about fire doors. The BWF is working really hard to try and make that a thing. It's all based around the SKEB model, which encompasses skills, knowledge, experience, and behaviour, and then brings that all under one singular framework then. The BSR in the UK, the safety regulator, has sort of recognised that now as the benchmark for individuals installing fire products. We expect that there to filter down through into Ireland in due course. The next protocol will be, now that it's been recognised, is that will filter through to the likes of the UCAS accredited schemes. So if you are covered under a BM Trada installation or maintenance scheme, we would expect that they will adopt this framework as a minimum standard under the scheme. So it will lay out educational requirements as well as experience and behaviours on site. All right. So I'll put a wee QR code there. If anyone wants to get a look at what that framework is, do feel free to scan that QR code now. It's also worth noting that this will be embedded into the National Occupational Strategy in the UK. So we will see, as part of the NVQ college learning programs, that tradesmen or apprentices will be taught how to install fire doors through the education system in due course. All right, and that's it for me. So we'll just move on to questions here now. Mark, if you want to work down through them. It's just worth noting, if there's anything that we can't answer here, please do drop us an email there. I've put the email address in the bottom there at technical@heronfiredoors.com. Thanks. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Julian and Donal. Okay, so just opening up the chat functions there first, Julian and Donal. Taking a look here at the first one from, it's the question 2. First one from Michael is, from where can you obtain a triple certificate on a door set?
Yeah, so Triscope certification encompasses fire, smoke, and security. It's a BM Trada Q mark certificate. So anyone covered under a Q mark scheme can request for that to be drafted, provided that they have the appropriate primary test evidence to begin with. We obviously do. We've got all the fire, smoke, acoustic, weather, past 24 tests ourselves. We have collated that into a number of dual and triple scope certificates. So depending on what the requirements is, we could probably supply it.
Yeah. The first part of that question also done was, do FOAs typically include or exclude comment for the smoke performance of a door set?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll let you have that one, Julian.
Yeah, no, really good question. Typically, they exclude it unless it's specifically addressed. I'm right in saying that, Donal, in all instances. Yeah, a standard fire resistance, either field of application or an XAP for doors, usually about whether the tested design variations still maintain fire resistance. Smoke performance is not something you should always assume that it's going to be there automatically. So you do need to drill down that wee bit further.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
There, it also says one there, there's clearly lots of technicality to observe, various regulatory requirements. As a manufacturer, do Heron actively lobby the authorities regarding future requirements and changes to regulations?
We do that, yeah. Not maybe directly ourselves, but through quite a few trade associations that we're part of. We're part of a trade association called ASDMA, which is the Architectural and Specialist Door Manufacturers Association. It's been around now for 30 years. It's companies like ourselves who are door manufacturers. It also has the major test houses that you'll probably have heard of, the likes of Warrington Fire, Element, BM Trotter, which are all under that remit. Other test houses such as Effectus, the major door core suppliers such as Halspan, Falcon, Woodia, we all come together under that trade association, and they really do hold it together well when they identify new legislation coming out or lobby for bits of legislation that aren't existing that we're seeing in the market, particularly sometimes loopholes where you can technically do something but you know it's not right. That's whenever ASMA would come together to put those questions to government or similar regulatory authorities to push that forward. We're also members of the British Woodworking Federation, the Guild of Architectural Ironmongers, who also do similar. And myself and Donal also shortly will be taking examinations under the Institution of Fire Engineers, which are have quite a good presence in Ireland, and that's another body where we would also lobby or ask for change.
Yeah, so just to build on that, there has been a number of government responses that we've collectively responded to through the trade associations that we work with, particularly the Grenfell Inquiry, the 58 points that came out of that. We certainly fed back some comments that we felt that would help sort of reform the regulations, so to speak.
Very good. And one final question, folks, just before I close. Does this framework help with training maintenance personnel who may need to repair fire doors?
Yes, it's specifically around that. Yeah, with that will the outputs of the CITB framework will filter down through the third-party certification schemes across the UK and Ireland as a first port of call, and then you will see it filter over the next number of years through the education system.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, well, I'm conscious that we're approaching the hour as well. I'd just like to close out by thanking Julian and Donal for compiling the presentation. As you can see, it's quite technical and we're only touching it on parts. Our team are available should you have any questions or if we can help you in any way. We were trying to keep this as technical as possible and non-sales because the amount of fire doors that are needed as an industry, we can't make them all. So if we can raise the standards collectively and help, you know, both sides of the water, that's what we're here to do, to raise standards and to help. What I would like to say with as well is having fire doors is safeguarding your own businesses, because if one door fails, and you can Google search to see how many fires are throughout the UK and Ireland every year, that doesn't change, it's increasing and the numbers are there to prove it, but one fire door fails, every fire door in your business gets checked. It will go through it root and branch. So it's not only a fire door, sometimes we're busy, but you can buy the fire door, it's the installation and it's the sign off, and hopefully that's where we can help lobby government and help bring our experience to the association and help raise standards where required. Something we didn't touch on as well within the MMC community as well is PQQs and tenders. Heron Fire Doors is excellent in terms of we have solar on our windows. We have the factory heated by biomass. We've just connected up our battery. I think we'll be off grid. So in terms of support and helping people on that journey and supporting them through their applications, I think it's going to be a very strong selling point. And again, that helps other industries show if we can do it, how can they do that for their businesses? And we're all about open doors. And hopefully through the MMC, we'll get a tour if there's interest there to walk through the factory and share more of that story with you all. But I'd just like to close out by thanking Donal and Julian, Anna and Paul for the opportunity, and for everyone that stayed with us. And if there is any other questions, we'll get our details out to you, and we'd be more than happy to help. And thank you everyone for staying with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, folks.